Alright, game dev crew, welcome back to The Forge for week 2, where we're going to talk about theme and the elements of a game. Now, you may have been playing games all your life, but have you ever really sat down and dissected exactly what a game is made out of? And I'm not talking about just the physical things you can interact with, whether it's code for a video game, or the music, or the visuals, or the game pieces on a tabletop game. No, we're gonna have to get a little abstract here so we can see how all these things fit into certain manageable categories. When we talk about making a game, or really when we talk about crafting an experience, we need to keep these 4 basic elements in mind. That's mechanics, aesthetics, technology, and story. Now, mechanics are the procedures and rules of your game. They describe the goal of your game and how players can or cannot achieve that goal. Now, it's the mechanics that really set apart games from other mediums of entertainment, like a movie. A movie is a very linear entertainment experience. In other words, you are experiencing exactly what the director intended you to experience. Same thing with a book or a song. Mechanics are what allow interactivity with the consumer. So as a game designer, you will design a game, but you have to build into it a way for the player to interact with that game and make their own experience out of it. This is not possible without mechanics. Element number 2 is aesthetics. This is how your game looks, feels, smells, tastes, all the things that provide sensory input. Aesthetics are incredibly important to crafting an experience as they have the most direct relationship with that player's experience. Diving into some psychology there, but a player experiences the world through what? Hearing, sight, taste, smell, and touch. So crafting good aesthetics is crucial to the experience that player is going to have. Next is technology. Now, we're not necessarily referring to high technology or the latest graphics or the newest technology. Technology just refers to whatever medium or material is used to actually play your game, right? We can play a game on a high-end PC with all the latest graphics cards. We can also play an awesome game with a pencil and a paper. Guys, Dungeons & Dragons started like 30 years ago and it's still running strong. And that's just pencil and paper. So high technology does not equate better game, but it is important to consider what kind of technology your game is going to utilize or use to give that player an experience. The last thing, and but certainly not the least important, is story or the narrative. Now, this refers to a sequence of events that can unfold in your game. They may be linear or scripted. They could also be emergent and random. In any case, it's really important to understand how events connect to each other throughout a game. So as you start to think about designing a game, it's very important that you consider these 4 elements. Ask yourself, am I using all these 4 elements in my game? Is there anything that can be gained from changing or improving one of these elements? And perhaps most importantly, ask if each of those elements is reinforcing each other. For example, it may not make much sense to have a game where there's a mechanic of player elimination or players drop off as the game goes, unless the story somehow supported the idea that there needs to be a last player standing. And we'll do plenty of projects where we get to practice coming up with stuff for each of these areas. If you don't have a grasp or any ideas of certain mechanics, then look in the links below that list out a lot of common mechanics found in games. When these 4 elements work well together, we have what's called a theme. Now, as game designers, we kind of have to live with the fact that a lot of people view games as simply a waste of time or a distraction. Not so. The amount of depth that can be achieved by using these 4 elements together, creating really resonant, meaningful themes, is what's bringing games into the limelight as an art form. But it's so very important that you keep this idea of these elements and the theme in mind all the time, and to try to support and unify that theme anywhere you possibly can. For example, I may make a game where a group of players are going up against an evil vampire. This is going to be a tabletop game. I want to keep in the mood of vampires, so the aesthetics are going to be very dark with like a dark color scheme, maybe some fancy script font to look old school. I'll look at producing some artwork that maybe has some castle themes to it, very Dracula-esque. Now, what mechanics are going to support this theme? Well, player elimination might be a thing. So maybe throughout the course of this game, players actually die off or maybe get converted to vampires themselves, making it harder and harder for the remaining players to actually accomplish their goal, which maybe that's not a good thing. But let's just keep going down this idea anyway. Through the use of cards or rolling some dice, you may get unlucky and get bit by a vampire. And let's say that turns you into a vampire in a couple of turns, and now you're actively working against the remaining players. Those are some ideas for mechanics that really tie into that vampire hunting theme. What do we have left? We have technology, which I kind of mentioned, though this could probably work as a video game as well. But let's just say I made a ton of video games and I want to make a tabletop for a change. So with that, there will be dice, there will be cards, there will be board movement, but the spontaneous narrative that comes out over tabletop games, especially ones like this, kind of D&D adventure-esque, that's going to do great things for the story and the experience. So I don't mind this being a tabletop game at all. And the story folds into it. So I know that all the players are starting out in this vampire hunting party, and they're working against the board to kill this evil vampire, but at any given time, an event may happen that turns a player and totally changes the dynamics of the team. That's a cool idea. Bum, bum, bum. But that's just one example. There are tons and tons of ideas and possibilities out there. And here's a life lesson. Ideas are cheap. Everyone's got ideas. Reach out and grab one. What you guys are learning to do is how to make those ideas become a reality, because that's what game designers do. They turn dreams into real-life experiences. I hope you enjoyed this week's assignments where you get to think about theme and these 4 elements, and I can't wait to see you next week when we really dive into story. Happy designing, and we'll see you in the Forge.